Yeah.
Hi, everybody. On behalf of the Institute for
Oh, I
Harmonic
mean,
Resonance Technology, I welcome all of you to What Role Does Intention Play in ME? Matrix Energetics Advanced Webinar with Melissa Joy Johnson and Dr. Richard Bartlett. Please feel free to use the chat box to ask questions or to comment, and remember that your comments and questions can be seen by the other attendees. If your question doesn't get answered during the webinar, please feel free to email it to info@I-HRT.com. For the best possible sound and video quality, please close all other applications on your device. And if you find that you're missing either sound or video, please try clicking on the Reconnect button at the bottom of the screen, or you can try logging on to the webinar from a different browser. A replay link will be sent to all of you 48 hours after this live webinar ends. If you don't get your link, please check your spam folder, and if it isn't there, email us at info@I-HRT.com. And now I'm happy to introduce Melissa Joy Johnson and Dr. Richard Bartlett.
And if you're missing sound and video, then you were missing all of the antics that were going on before the webinar started. So welcome, and hopefully you were able to participate in that flurry of activity. We're super excited that you're all here. We've got actually a really big webinar with people from all around the world, and even some people from other worlds that are choosing to join us. So we're super excited. And as usual, it wouldn't be Matrix Energetics if we knew exactly what we were going to say or what we were going to share with you. But we have some general agendas, so to speak, and then we're going to let go of our agendas and let the field move through us and talk about the role of intention in ME. And what we think is that the role of intention isn't what anyone thinks it is. And I'll turn it over to Richard to expand upon that.
well, this is always a question that comes up in every single seminar, and I understand why, because there's this idea that you can't get something done unless you're doing something. And this is true, but the problem, I think, is that what you think is you actually isn't you at all. So the you that you're concentrating or focusing on, the you that feels inadequate or unable to, quote, do something, is not the part that should or could be intending. And this is where Melissa and I have difficulty to some degree translating the idea of intention, because intention means, it doesn't mean to go into tension, which we've talked about a number of times. Like intention, it feels painful. Intending is a little better because it's more of a, kind of a verb thing. It's kind of moving and flowing. So intention is not I don't think, at least, it's not a set design that you start out with. Now, this is not true, of course, either, because whatever whatever distinctions you've made in your life, whatever your desire to serve is, however you define that desire, and what you've done, how you've studied, and what you've created to fulfill those desires, of course, would be one potential definition of intention. The thing is, it's kind of like this orgonite pyramid here. You've got, I don't know if you can see it, but you got all these layers. So the top layer I just described is the one you're aware of, but then maybe the one that you're utilizing is all the way at the base here. And so your base intention can be quite different, so-called, than your consciously held awareness. So I find that intention is very, very important, but again, I don't even like the word to describe it because it's so misconstrued, mistranslated in consciousness to mean intending to do something, deciding what to do, and then setting out to do that in a progression. It's very similar. I mean, the way a lot of people think of it, whether you call it law of attraction or intraction, depending, the way they think of it is very much divided into steps. Like, I'm going to think about this, and then I'll focus on that, then I'll do this. Then I'm going to look and see. That's very similar to how I was trained in medicine. Standard operating procedure is subjective. So you listen to what the person says, which of course I always do, and I'm sure Melissa does as well in webinar setting when we're when I'm doing individual client things through Skype. I want to know everything they can possibly tell me. I want to know the things also they're not aware of that they can tell me. In other words, what their physiology might show. I then want to form an objective idea of how to begin to approach addressing what they've conferred to me. But that is as far as that model really can take you. An assessment, like, well, you listen to them and you decide what's wrong and then you decide what you're going to do about it. That would be assessment. And then your plan is a stepwise progression. This is in medicine again, a stepwise progression of how to address each complaint. Now, I do that. Like when I'm working with people, say somebody has like fibromyalgia, just fibromyalgia, and they have headaches, and they have menstrual difficulties, and they're a man, and that's really a problem, right? Unless they're talking about their marriage. Relationship stuff, that comes up, money, so on. So you can make a list, okay? And that's a form of intending, because I intend to address this and this and this and this. Now, here's where it gets tricky. This is where the crux of notice what you notice is very key to the way I would, at least, and I think most as well, would define within the inner framework of the intending process, is to allow flow of consciousness to naturally notice where attention flows with each given pattern. So this is an art form all itself that could take a whole lifetime. It will take. I mean, I've been working on this a long time, and I still every day work on this. But it is a very useful and powerful place to start. But the inner journey in intending is much deeper than the surface process of what you think your intention is when you start to, quote, do something.
I really like or prefer to transcend the word intention and expand into attention, because where attention goes, information flows. And intention really has a signature of a signature of force, where I'm going to intend to do something in order to make something happen. Whereas attention really has a signature of flowing, of being in the continuum of noticing. And in a sense, it includes intention, but not as a constricted parameter that you need to go up against, but it actually takes us from the tip of, say, the orgonite pyramid down to a deeper level where we can expand into a multitude of possibilities. Now, of course, we always want what we want. Our clients want outcomes. We want to direct our consciousness into a particular focalized form of awareness, to be a conduit for consciousness. But if you're intending apart from that conduit of flow, then you're actually going to encounter kind of a polarity conundrum. You're going to buttress up against the things you want and the things you don't want at the same time. This is part of the problem with the law of attraction, because it has such a limited focus on, say, intention. But if you expand that into attention, well, then that dovetails beautifully into one of the key principles that we teach about noticing what you notice. Because it's a form of intention that doesn't necessarily bottleneck you into a certain limited configuration that might prevent you from accessing all these other patterns of possibilities, all these other focal points of awareness. So I love intention, but I love intention as a form of attention that opens you into much more. And then you can take a directed focus from that expanded state of attention and really serve as like a laser beam or a conduit for consciousness, not to drive an outcome, but to command the expression that might more closely match whatever was intended by the client. Does that make sense?
Yes, I totally agree with that, but I also from a medical model could disagree with that. I don't really disagree with anything Melissa said at all. However, if you think that you're going to, at least if you're medically trained, even if you're not, if you think you're going to transcend the desire to be specifically helpful in a given situation and to somehow find the key to be able to do that and then do that consistently, I haven't done it.
Well, I didn't say that either. Like I didn't.
No, I haven't done that, and I don't expect to, because, and this is where it gets tricky, because if you accept right up front that yes, I should not intend and so on, but and I agree 100% with Melissa about attention, but if you accept that but yet know you're still going to, then you're being honest with yourself fully, and when you're fully honest with yourself, then you're more in flow. So know that you will never probably, quote, get rid of desire to help someone by doing a specific thing, not necessarily to gain credit for being a healer or doing that. I don't care about that. But you do care about helping people. We all do. So that's always front and foremost in my mind. And I will tell you, I spend every single day of my life pondering in a gentle way, not beating myself up too much, but in a gentle way, how I could improve my results for people, because I like to think, and of course it could be just a self-esteem thing, but I like to think that I could perhaps go deeper somehow in myself, access more of the totality of awareness, as Melissa was saying, or attention and focus, and then somehow bring that to the fore in a way that is a chalice for a greater expanded set of possibilities within a given construct of what it is that a person would like to experience.
Isn't this a good opportunity, though, for both of us to share a possible distinction between desire and intention, because they aren't necessarily always the same. Like, we all have a desire to be of service and to be able to support our clients and to be able to move them into a different configuration. That desire can catalyze into an intention, but they aren't necessarily synonymous. I don't know if you agree or disagree.
I think sometimes they appear to be, but I agree with you fully that they're not necessarily. So it's at the level that you're working at. We've talked, Melissa and I have talked about this many times, how, for instance, if I wanted to master a certain thing on the keyboard or the guitar, I might not be able to play it. But then just thinking about it, intending to be able to play it, sets in motion at an unconscious level the flow, the events, the circumstances, the motor skills, and everything else that would allow me to utilize all those aspects and then at some point be able to do that. So that kind of ties into what I'm saying about constantly working at this without working. It's a conundrum because you can't actually get someplace that you're not by trying to get there by realizing you're not there. It won't get you. It won't get you there.
And this is where it gets so tricky when we're teaching, because we're talking about doing nothing to access the all. We're talking about affecting consciousness and configurations in consciousness, but at the same time, we're saying you got to get out of the way. So in a sense, the intention is to get out of the way, but you need to show up to drive or be the catalyst for the very intention. So it's like, what are we doing? Are we getting out of the way? Are we showing up? We're doing all of that kind of simultaneously. And that's really the big dance that we're pointing to in ME. It's, yeah, you get out of the way. And yes, you show up. And yes, you have an intention. And yes, you are not the doer, and you are absolutely necessary as a conduit of consciousness to catalyze those possibilities that become available for your client.
And even your so-called insecurities or your doubts about what you can or cannot do are part of that process. And why we say intention, one of the main reasons I think that we talk about intention not being useful is because if you tend to do something and then you don't do it, then you feel bad about yourself, then you can't do it. And so then you make a distinction. I've seen this with my son with his art over and over again, where he wants to do something, he can't do it. Well, I know now. I mean, I have some skills, right? I will talk to his unconscious mind. I'll say, well, if you just go to sleep tonight now, I think in the morning you'll wake up and you'll be able to do this because you're just working too hard at it, you know? And so I intend for him to have an unconscious experience of realizing his inner potential, but I'm not actually doing it, cannot do it, could not draw anything like that to save my life. But sure enough, he'll wake up and then he can do it. Well, all a person needs sometimes, it's not so much what you do or don't do. It's the encouragement and the love and the showing up that you offer that is the intent to be of service. And that intent is something you can practice, you can crystallize, you can realize, and you can create a focus of attraction, a strange attraction, so to speak, where all of your effort and lack or letting go of effort thereof gets pulled into that vortex of will, which then becomes a focus, like a rose unfolding for what can occur when you let go of the need to be specific in an outcome, when you let go of the need to even be, quote, human in an outcome, and you allow grace to manifest through you through whatever process you may be appearing to utilize in the moment.
And here's the thing, like we're here to talk about intention for an hour, and like we're going to talk about it till we're blue in the face, but this is not something that you need to spend a disproportionate amount of time cultivating. I mean, you can do it over the course of a lifetime, or you can install a meta rule in your field that gets activated every time you step into the ME field that says, hey, my intention is to be of the greatest service humanly possible, to show the most amount of compassion, and to have the greatest degree of flexibility so I can support my client in moving into a different configuration. That could almost be the underlying deep layer of that pyramid that is the allowance and the flow and the attention. And then with that being said, then you've gotten out of the way, you've called forth the field to show up and support you, and then you're going to step in and show up and let your personal attention be the intention to support the movement in consciousness, because everybody's going to want results. They just are. And as we know in ME, we can't really promise results in advance. We never know. But we can have a soft intention that will address every pattern on someone's holographic display or on their clipboard or on their intake form. But what those results look like is a curious mystery, and may show up completely differently than we may intend. But that doesn't mean that we didn't reach the greatest outcome.
Yet you can still, and I have, obsessively practiced specific intent with being able to affect the shoulder or move a vertebrae or change a pattern or correct a tilted pelvis or whatever. You can do this, but you make it a game. You make it a game. It's not a pass-fail. It's not a feel bad if you don't do it or feel good if you do. Although I will tell you, every time you do something well, pause, like I say in the seminars, pat yourself on the shoulder, say good boy, and then without ego, and then just creating an anchor, what is called in NLP, and then return back. The more you stack these results, the more you notice. It's funny because I will do a number of sessions throughout the year, as will Melissa, and I often don't hear back from people. I don't know if anything changed or anything was better or whatever. And all of that, intending to do it from that level, will not get you to what you desire. Going to the point where you're confident enough to show up, and also confident enough to let go of your human abilities and frailties, your conditions, your conditioning, your weaknesses, and your strengths, then allow for the greatest level playing field where the greatest grace can flow. And then I get to hear sometimes, later, much later sometimes, wow, this changed completely for me when you did that. Well, I tell you, it's not an ego thing, but after 30 years in service, I still like to hear those things, because I still need, at some human level, I need to have that feedback so that then I can just realize, that I really am doing as I intend, which is to get out of the way and to be of greatest service.
So a lot of times we talk about the role of neutrality in being able to access a multitude of possibilities, and neutrality as being kind of the the portal into the unified field. And so neutrality coupled with intention is actually a very complementary process, because we always want what we want, so we've acknowledged that. We want what we want, and we can be neutral while still wanting what we want, and we can still direct our focus. It seems paradoxical, but the easiest way to get neutral is to let go of the need to be neutral, to let go of resisting the fact that you know you're supposed to be neutral, but you still want what you want, and that will open you into flowing into all the possibilities. And sometimes we think, oh, I can't be of service, or I can't help someone if I'm not neutral. I'm too invested in the outcome. And that's not true. It may show up as being true when you're resonating with that type of belief system, but it isn't universally true. It can be a limitation, but it isn't true. You can want what you want and not be neutral, but if you can get neutral to not being neutral, then you're going to have the same effect as if you were completely neutral without an investment in the outcome.
That's the true essence of it for me, is being neutral to not being neutral. If you get to the point where you know that you can be upset, you can be happy, you can be sad, you can be whatever, and it still doesn't change the underlying bedrock of who or what you are as a platform of service, then it doesn't really matter anymore. And once it doesn't matter, when you're really not concerned about what people think, and you get over, well, I shouldn't charge for my services because I don't know what I'm doing. And then, and all these things will come up, and they still came up with me the first time I started doing my sessions on Skype. I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I've been in this business for a long time, but I don't know what I'm doing. Well, take that part that doesn't know, merge it with the part of all the information, just like this, merge it with all the information, all the things you've studied, all the things you've learned throughout your life, maybe things you've heard Melissa and I say or do or demonstrate. Wherever you can find a reference, allow those references to congeal into a beautiful geometry that offers you all the opportunities for change and transformation without consciously needing to know how it's built, and certainly not needing to take it apart in order to understand it. So
there's actually some pretty deep questions coming up. We're going to just dive in. Why not? So how does the intention and attention, you've been paying attention, how does the intention and attention of the client influence the possible results? If the client's intention is not clear and he or she doubts, how does that affect the process?
I don't think it affects it at all. And in fact, I will tell you, I don't think anybody really ever doubts if they're showing up in your world. I think what they have is maybe a conscious lack of awareness about what their deeper textures of their, quote, you can call it their soul or their unconscious mind or their congruent, coherent consciousness, what that part knows. It's not important that they know what they're made of in order to have the result that unconsciously they know they can have. They show up for a reason. This is the thing I would say. They always show up for a reason. And they may not. This is where letting go of the need for results, but knowing that results can occur in spite of you. This is where the most power comes from, because I've had this happen over and over again. People not just hearing about me, I show up looking like this. They don't have any reference for me. They haven't read the books. Somebody just recommended. And then I have to go from there to here in a 30-minute space, which is easy enough to do. But I have to let go of the idea that I have to explain everything and do everything and prove everything. All of that part of that intent, you can have that as a point of reference, angels dancing on a pin, where it's done, you've done it once, you don't have to ever do it again, and then just open your mouth and trust what comes out. If you have an intention to be of service, and then you allow yourself to open your mouth and speak from your heart, it's going to be fine. And what's amazing, again, is and we've seen this over and over again, that conscious doubt or lack of belief. It's more just fear than it is anything else. Look at that as fear and have compassion for yourself and for them, and then let go of the need to have a result. And then the greatest results truly can occur.
I often consider doubt to be a form of skepticism, which is just inverted curiosity. And if you flip doubt into curiosity, well, then that opens into an array of possibilities. I agree 99.99% with what Richard just shared. I will add or augment that response with, I do think that the client's intention does have an effect on the sustainability of the results, because they may be running a strong intention of secondary gain to recreate the pattern, or they're loving the attention that they're getting from you as a practitioner, as long as they have their disease. And so if they're not clear and coherent in what their intention is to move out of one configuration into another, and they're running a stronger intention called I feel loved when people pay attention to me, even if it means I have a disease, that can affect the results. So getting clear with the client through honesty and through transparency can really help them get aligned on what their intention is. Because a lot of times people don't, this sounds terrible, but a lot of times people don't want to get better. Or let's take a lighter example. People come in to quit smoking. Like Richard and I can't tell you how many times we see clients that say they want to quit smoking and they absolutely do not. Like one of their
smile when they say it.
Yeah, like they love smoking. They just feel like they should quit smoking, or their partner wants them to quit smoking, or they saw a commercial that said smoking's bad for you, right? It's coming from somewhere other than their true intention. And that's where it can play out as skewed results.
A really funny, well, it's a sad, funny example, but my friend Mark Dunn, back before we were even teaching together, he had a client that came in who had slipped and fallen in a store and was on crutches and was quite handicapped in that sense. And so Mark went all out and worked on this person, and he felt really good about the results he got, and he thought they were going to be better. Well, they came in the next time, and I think it was, a couple months later, they were in a wheelchair, and they were paralyzed. And Mark was horrified, and they said, "Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Dunn. Now I'll never have to work ever again." And so they got the result they wanted, even though it was inverse of what was intended by the practitioner, you see. And this is what Melissa's talking about. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen this and run into it. However, that's also not to say, for my point anyway, that some things are just beyond my skill level. I just don't know. I mean, I've seen things like with a woman with a cancer out to here looking 9 months pregnant and naked, on Skype, and I looked at it and I'm supposed to do something with that? Hell no.
Wait, you're seeing naked women on Skype since when?
This woman was naked because clothes wouldn't fit on her, and they wanted
okay.
And so she's laying on her side, and there's this big, huge tumor, huge, and it filled up her whole abdomen and pushed up against her rib cage, and there wasn't anything I could do about it, and I didn't think there was anything I could do about it. I tried, but I was in a position with my medical knowledge, for one thing, but another thing is this was on display. You see, it was like, here it is, this is what I've got, no one's been able to help me, and then I'm going to add to that? No. And I just told them, I don't think I can do anything. I told them right then and there. But that allows me, you see, this is the thing. If you let go of your intent to know you can do something, sometimes the greatest things can occur, because one of the great principles is give up before you start trying. And if you give up and let go, that's another way of saying let go, then the results can be quite surprising, because you've been honest, you've gotten your considerations out of the way, you've gotten your fears and your lacks and your insecurities out of the way, and then because you have nothing left, nothing to bet or gamble, then miracles can and do show up.
So the second deep question was, how does the fear of death impact our overall wellness and our potential to heal? Is it the root cause of anxiety and stress and disease?
Well, depending on if you're a Democrat or Republican, that's the root cause of stress and disease right now. No, death is just, it's like Carlos Castaneda said, make death your passenger. Death is actually your friend. If you know you're going to die, you can get that one out of the way. It's not something you have to worry about. You see? You know it's going to happen. Everybody's going to die. No one's going to transcend and become what, Babaji or something like that necessarily. Not likely. Maybe Babaji really did do such things. I don't know. I've never met him. I don't know. It's a possibility. But can you live much longer? Yes. Would you want to? Well, look at Not Stranger in a Strange Land. What's the one? There's a Robert Heinlein book about a guy that does live almost forever, and he hates it. He can't die, and it's just, there are limitations, but those limitations are actually, once you understand them, they actually become the bowl for transformation within the context of your life. Again, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people who started to really live when they had a diagnosis and knew they were going to die. That's when they actually became happy and they became fully actualized, and they actually enjoyed every moment of their life. And when they did that, their cancers often went away as well.
And that's where, like, the fear of death can actually catalyze a true, genuine healing. I would also say, in the context of the way that the question was asked, is fear of death impacts our overall wellness and potential to heal significantly, because as long as we are in fear of death, we are continually programming ourselves for that inevitable outcome. And it actually becomes a morphic field entrainment. And so if we're programmed for death, which death is just essentially at the deepest level, the hologram of program, if we're programmed for death and we're running a fear of it, then all our body hears all the way down to the DNA is death, 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 instead of heal and grow and heal and grow. And so coming into an honest acknowledgement of your fear is an opening into transcending it. So denying it, not the best equation for healing and transformation, but acknowledging it, kind of in the same way if someone gets a diagnosis of a terminal illness, they have a choice. They're like, well, I'm gonna die, so I might as well start embracing life, because all fear of death is in essence a fear of living. And so if you can reframe it in such a way that acknowledges what's really there, then it can be a catalyst for healing.
Well, I just tell people with terminal diseases to stay the hell out of airports. And laughter, by the way, that unconscious little thing, that can change the way a person feels pretty quickly. And so the whole death thing, this is why in the first and second book, and Melissa and I in the second book, why we've talked about not eating right for your health. Not, because what you're doing is you're afraid of disease, afraid of dying. It's not the same thing of eating what you enjoy or what makes your body feel good. But if you eat a certain way or take a medication or whatever because some authority says you should, then that ties right into that unconscious fear. Well, what'll happen if I don't, right? Oh my God, if I have this bacon sandwich, I'm going to die of a heart attack. Now, that's not very useful, is it? However, that's not to say that if your body feels a certain way when you eat a certain thing, that it's not useful to do that. But I don't think it's necessarily useful, though, then to form a distinction and say, well, everybody should eat raw. I think everybody should eat in the raw, naked lunch. But it's not the same thing, obviously. Raw food is great. And it provides enzymes and minerals and all this, and I've done it. But protein is great as well, and I'm doing that now. And as you get older, that works real well for insulin resistance. Certain people will do much better on a diet, but I've always pointed out the word diet has the word die in it. It's programmed right into the consciousness of the word itself. So whatever you're doing to avoid something by doing some behavior that thinks will help you live longer or avoid it is probably driving you right towards it.
And then the second part of the question was, it is the fear of death the root cause of anxiety and stress and disease? there's like, I hear 20 flippant answers. So go ahead.
I think we've answered that pretty well already.
Yeah. And turn off your TV. So one of the objectives that we said we were going to cover, which we have not covered yet, is with respect to achieving, and I love our terminology, achieving an optimum result by doing less. So let's talk about that, because that's really an important thing that we teach about, doing less and getting more.
That goes back to, again, experiments I did with my bioluminator device, this tower, that allowed me to take a normal picture with the camera. In fact, I've got some. I'll show you. Got them right here. I have this device. I have it at home now, but I had it in my office, and it helped me form some of the key distinctions in matrix energetics, because it allowed me to see the differences in people's energy field and in their physiology when I did less. Now, here's an example right here. This is a guy that had low back pain, but I saw this pattern at his throat. I only have 2 of these, but I'll show you. So look how blurry this is. Can you see this? Yeah. Now, so I worked on this area in his throat. I saw this area in his throat, and so I thought, well, because I can see it on the film, you could take a Polaroid shot and then see what was there, and then I tried harder to fix it. The more I tried to fix something, the worse the picture got. This is when I just focused on his low back, like what he asked me to do, and ignored that dark area on his throat. Notice the dark area is still there on this photograph, but look how much clearer everything is. Now, to me, I formed a distinction, and Melissa and I both have, of that the more clear something is in a pattern, the more likely there is to be coherence. And this is what we saw over and over again with the Illuminator, that the more I tried to do a specific thing, like I'd learned some chiropractic technique, or I'd done this or I'd done that, the more I focused on all the problems, I made those problems more distorted in the energy field. The actual photons that created the fields of information and energy around the person got more and more distorted. So this is where we formed one of those ideas of doing less. Homeopathy works on this principle, where a homeopathic remedy in a very high potency can have extremely powerful effects all the way through the psycho-emotional components, all the way to the physical components of a person's condition. And there's literally nothing there within this remedy except for the imprint of the information in a pattern. So this is where a long time ago I started thinking in patterns and realized that diseases, conditions, symptoms, all these things were just words, and they were words for patterns. And once you realize this, just the idea of playing with a pattern rather than working on a condition or a symptom is moving your intent to a softer focus. I remember Dr. Bandler talked about this in a seminar. I spent 10 days with him. He talked about, instead of intending to do something, he said, well, let's just soften. Let's just soften down. And so the more you soften your approach, the more coherent you become, the more coherent your field becomes, the more resonant those frequencies of information, and the less you're fighting yourself at an unconscious level, the more you can connect with and go into rapport with the other person as well.
And we like to say, avoid the dreaded do something disease. And this essentially leads us into the next thing that we said we would talk about, which is just more of the same, which is, how do we really know when to kind of sit back and observe versus when to go all in? And I love that question, because I think they're one and the same at a certain level. Because in a sense, when you're sitting back and you're actually holding space and you're in that coherent state, it is every bit as effective as when you allegedly dive all in with your intention and you're doing something. Both are really, really useful. Just falling back on your basic fundamental skill sets of windows is a really great way to discern whether you're going to do something or you've got to not do something window, but the field is still doing something. So that's one way that you can make the distinction. A lot of times I just love to trust my awareness. If I'm interested and curious and really drawn into focusing on something, I trust that. I trust when I see myself doing something, then I'll go ahead and do it. Whereas if I'm not that interested in a pattern and I kind of just get this pregnant pause and I want to sit back and just kind of watch and calibrate, then I trust that as well. And so that's kind of an art form that you develop over time as you develop trust in yourself as a practitioner and you develop trust in whatever field you're playing in. There's a time to dive in and there's a time not to, but not diving in doesn't mean that you're not being of service and that you're not being of value, because as you just saw in the bioluminator photos, less is more. And if you can get the right amount of intention, that soft interaction, then that can just be a huge game changer.
I want to show them how much work went into making these distinctions when I was originally trying to figure this out. And this is not all of them. There's another whole box, but it's like hundreds. Because my training, I found all my training and many, many things did not help me to help someone else. Once I got to once you have a realization that takes you into, quote, a finer texture of perceptual reality, it behooves you, I think, to some degree, this is intent, it behooves you to follow where you're led. And this is exactly what Melissa was saying. She trusts, and I'm the same way, and this is what I developed many years ago, and she might have partially modeled this for me, because back when I was just a chiropractor, I would see myself doing something, and then I would do it. And I wouldn't do it unless I saw myself doing it. So I would often sit off to the side and someone would be telling me all their problems, and I just didn't see myself interacting with them, so I didn't do it. I just sat and sat and sat. And it says, well, are you going to do something? I said, I don't know. Are you going to inspire me to do something? Because you're not inspiring me. I'd say something like that. And they go, what? And I go, okay, now I want to do this. And then I'd see a spot that I wanted to touch or I wanted to do something with. But like Melissa said, this is letting go of your ego, letting go of your personality, trusting what shows up to such a degree that you form some meta rules in your own field and behavior where you know when you can trust something because you've established rapport with yourself at a core level.
True. No, I was just thinking, like, do we really even let go of our ego? I mean, I think our ego still shows up. Our ego is the interface of our inner self with the rest of the world. And so you don't have to let go of your ego. That's like thinking you have to be neutral in order to be of service. You can have an ego and still be of service. The ego is a form of intention. The ego is as we like to say, energy going out. It is the expression of consciousness. I understand ego gets a bad rap, and it's, been bastardized as being the evil villain for all the woes of the world. But realize you don't have to let go of your ego in order to support someone in the healing or transformational process. That's another limitation that will get more in your way than the actual ego, which is just a construct of consciousness. It's not even real.
And it gets back, and I totally agree with that. It gets back to what Melissa was saying before, though, is let go of the need to let go of your ego.
Yeah.
Because letting go of the need to let go of your ego, you've actually let go of your ego.
That's let go of your ego.
Yeah, let go of my ego, and there's Lego Batman too. The thing is, it's like, I'll show up like this, and I've got a hole in my jeans because this is the only pair I have that fits, and so on and so forth, because it's not that I don't care about the person. I don't care about myself in the sense that I feel like I have to portray myself in a certain way in order for a person to respond to me in a certain way. And when you let go of that, and if you want to show up all in rhinestone spangles and cowboy boots, then do that in that moment. But trust in the next moment you might do something different. And that's what I mean by letting go. Ego, to me, the program constructs of how you think you should behave in the next moment, if you let go of those, you'd be surprised what can show up.
And that's a huge distinction. And that is what I think is the difference between the type of practitioners that we train around the world versus some of these other modalities. And I'm not into dissing other modalities. I think everything has its value. But the beautiful thing about what we teach and what our practitioners hopefully carry forth in the world is that they're not going to follow some automaton program or some preconceived notion about what the client expects them to do. That's the beautiful thing about ME is we don't know what's going to happen in a session. We have absolutely no idea. And so from that standpoint, the letting go of the ego is letting go of the ritualized, programmed, habituated behavioral constructs that we agree to participate in that are actually encoded for limitation. Because some of the greatest healing transformational sessions occur when you completely break the expectations of the client. I'm reminded of a story of one of our dear friends who has taken many, many seminars, Dr. Hector Garcia, and he would, one of the things that he would do is, you know, the clients would be seeing a traditional physician or an allopathic doctor, and they would have a incurable disease, and they would be told, all right, you have 4 weeks to live. And so Dr. Garcia would look at his chart and he would say, okay, well, we're all done today. I'll see you in 6 weeks. And boom, that completely changes the expectation of the experience for the practitioner who suddenly has now just been given a new prognosis for an extended timeline. And that kind of, well, that's quite ballsy, but that kind of signature is woven throughout the whole ME field where expect the unexpected.
It's the coyote shaman in matrix energetics, which was very much deliberately patterned into this from early time. I was a big fan of the coyote and the roadrunner, and now, of course, I find out it was all a big lie because I posted this. You know, the coyote can run 42 miles an hour, and the roadrunner can only run 20 miles an hour. So there never would have been a problem, you know, with the coyote catching the roadrunner. Only on cartoons or maybe politics.
Did you learn that speed on Facebook? Because you can trust everything on Facebook.
Well, I actually then went and looked it up, and
on Wikipedia.
Really, it is true, but it doesn't even matter. Just the idea itself, even if it's a lie. I love what Richard Bandler said. I don't care if it's a lie or the truth, and I really don't care anymore. It's whether or not it's useful in the moment. You know, don't just lie there. Do something. Do something useful. You know. And words and smiles and laughter and completely unobstructed behavior in the appropriate manner of inappropriateness, which can be perfectly useful. It's an art form. It's not something I recommend you do. It's something I recommend you ponder. Who am I really? What am I really congruent with? And how can I let go of who I think I am so I can become even more congruent with who I might be in the next moment?
But, you know, sometimes that inappropriate behavior, if you're truly congruent with it, is it's totally useful. I had a new client earlier today who was a referral from another client who I've seen many times, and we were playing around with some patterns, and my language got a little inappropriate for a session. I mean, I was dropping the F-bombs a couple times, and I said a couple things that were spiritually incorrect. And it completely broke open the rapport and completely enabled her to relax into being able to be honest about what was really going on, because she didn't expect that. She thought I was going to, you know, see all her patterns. So she was trying to tuck things away and she was trying to be all appropriate. And all of a sudden I threw out these words that she didn't expect from a healer. And that was exactly what she needed in order to give herself permission to relax into what was really going on and then to relax into something new. And I can tell you that I wasn't always like that. Like, I've probably always cussed all my life, but I always drew a fine line when I stepped into a professional clinical setting or a healing session, then I would behave according to the healer. Let that go. Let that go. Behave according to what feels appropriate in the moment or what seems indicated, and trust that, because that's going to be of the greatest value. The more authentic you can be in the interaction and in the exchange, and even finding yourself surprised by what you're saying, the more useful the exchange may be. But I must disclaimer, we do not condone using inappropriate language in the certification process. No.
Yeah. Do not say Trump or Clinton to anybody. It'll trigger them.
Absolutely.
Maybe if you Trump Clinton or you Clinton Trump, you know. Yeah, it's such a fine thing. And what was your first word, Melissa, that you ever spoke?
Well, it was really the F word, but I said that it was the S word in that one video when I was teaching a seminar because it felt a little more appropriate.
See, there you go.
So
And I know the background story, see.
That was modeling my mother. That was her vocabulary, obviously. I picked it up. So.
Yeah, well, I had a parakeet that actually picked up my mother's language, and it was saying, "Shit, Margie," all the time. and that was very useful. It made my mother laugh. But yeah, I mean, one of the classic examples that I like doing the surprising thing, especially when I'm surprised by it. I had this lady come in to see me, and I've told the story before, but you might not have heard it. Came in to see me, and she was there to see me as a naturopathic physician. And so I put on my naturopathic physician's hat, and she was like all apologetic and trembling and like, "Oh, doctor, my diet is so terrible. You know, I blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, and I leaned over and I kind of put a little Richard Bandler as a Catholic priest on. I said, wait a minute, my daughter, let me get my cassock and surplice if I'm going to hear your confession. So I put an imaginary cassock and surplice on, did my Catholic thing, slid the window, and I said, "Now I'm ready to hear your confession. You want to hear a confession? I ate at McDonald's this morning." She goes, "Oh, thank God." And she was all better. It was all that guilt with everything that she was eating that was more of a problem. The thought of the thing was worse, much worse problem than the thing itself. And what she wanted to hear and needed to hear is she was not a bad person because she liked to eat certain things in certain ways. That's more healing than giving someone a diet and saying, "Now you better stick to this." And, you know, in naturopathic school, we were taught an elimination diet. And so people come in to see me and they've been trained that way. And I said, you know, here's the thing. I really like the elimination diet. Just eliminate all that shit you're thinking and just eat what you like. And you would be shocked at how many people just transform, glow when they hear something like that. They don't need extra guilt. Guilt is much more detrimental what comes out of someone's mouth than what goes into someone's mouth, and particularly what's in their head that's been placed there by somebody else. You can do a great service just by trusting your heart, trusting that the words that you speak will be there when you need to, and do not parse what you say or don't say, or what you feel or don't feel, or how you show up. And that intent right there, that is a foundation intent where, you know, Jesus didn't always do the expected thing. This is part of what's on our list. He didn't always do the expected thing. He ate with sinners. He liked prostitutes, in fact, allegedly. But I mean, really, that was a Catholic Church slur of Mary Magdalene, who was actually one of his high disciples and married to him. And, you know, they had an intimate relationship. Well, all of that, if that had been taught, we would have had a much better society than this craziness we have.
Well, so in the words of Master Jesus, your faith has made you whole. How does that apply to intention from your perspective?
Well, faith, if you define it as an unconscious belief that can be activated in an unguarded moment by anything when you're in rapport, then that indeed can be faith. And Jesus used that very often. Classic story that I very much love is in the Aquarian Gospel, which may or may not be real or true, but it rings pretty true, where there was a pool where the angel would disturb the pool, and when the angel was there, there would be ripples coming out of the pool, and people would wade in and they'd be healed of their diseases. Well, there was this kid who was paralyzed, and the angel came to the pool, and all these people rushed in the pool, and Jesus asked the child, you know, do you not want to be, you know, lowered into the pool? And he says, "Oh, I believe the angel can heal me right where I am." And Jesus said, "Your faith has made you whole." It's that inner rapport with possibility that creates the miracle.
And, you know, allegedly it says in the Bible that, you know, faith is being sure of what you hope for. And you could say that a hope is a form of intention. But to me, I prefer to look at faith as not something that you hope for outside of yourself, but I define faith as following awareness into the heart. And when you move into the heart, then you have access to a plethora of wholeness and all possibilities that are available simultaneously. So faith can be really useful. Faith is a form of trust, and trust is connection, and connection is everything.
And if you're going to have hope, you have to have Crosby as well. And then 2 for the road, you got to have Crosby, Stills, and Nash, you know. And then you really have the hope that at least something beautiful can come out of it.
This is true. We were given our 5-minute notification about a minute ago. I just want to address a very common question that we get quite a bit, which is about working on loved ones. And you know, it can seem harder because we have an intention of wanting to help them, and how do we go about doing this? And either stop loving people or stop trying to help them, and or you can acknowledge honestly that, hey, I perceive this to be a greater challenge because I feel invested in the outcome. I really want to support you in moving into a different configuration. That actually can be enough for the skewed perspective to kind of clear. Sometimes not so much. You know, working on our loved ones, like they're our hearts, and seeing them suffering or seeing them be in pain can be a challenge. So you want to find strategies that will help you circumnavigate that perceived challenge. Don't forget that there are other practitioners. You could do a referral. You could also set it up as though you're working on someone that isn't your loved one. You could set it up holographically, that it's just a client, so to speak, as though we don't love our clients as much as our family members. But if you set it up, that clears all of the dynamics and the references and the distinctions that you've made over the years in relation to that loved one, and it can support you in being able to access neutrality a little bit better. There's so much we could say about that. Why don't you add some things, Richard?
Well, you can work on your effectively. Now I've got a big echo. All right, I'll just have to do this. You can do this once you form distinctions of what you have been able to do with them consistently. It can indeed be harder because you love them and you don't want to fail them. And you start out feeling bad right from the beginning. You feel like you're not going to be able to help them. None of this is conducive to an outcome that you desire. So letting go of that anyway without expectation is kind of one of those you do it all the time, and you let go of the need to be effective over time. Because I've had one child with Down syndrome got autism. And I had another one bronchitis and all sorts of problems. And you're never not going to be a parent or a lover or whatever. That's always in the pit. So again, it's kind of like realize you feel capable, let go of that. Let go of all your insecurities by acknowledging them, and then show up anyway.
And here's what I'll also add, because I help my family a lot. It actually surprises me because I think they're beyond reach sometimes, and I'm amazed at how I'm able to favorably influence their experiences. And then I remember very humbly that it isn't about me, that I'm calling forth on something that's bigger than the me that thinks it's me, and therefore then that releases me from the responsibility of feeling like I need to do something. And it also means that when, you know, a family member's cancer goes into remission, I can't call them up and say, hey, you guys, I did it, right? Because if I'm not responsible when it doesn't change, I'm also not responsible when it does change. But realize that love and compassion and the caring in the desire and the intention to want to help your family members is enough to create a ripple in their pond of consciousness. And so we might feel paralyzed and incapable. And at the same time, from that standpoint, when love enters in the equation, our intention can really, really make a difference. And then let go and get out of the way.
What I would say is don't form a distinction if you try to do something with someone and it doesn't appear to help them or work. Keep doing it. Keep doing it when it's not important, and play with it until you establish rapport with getting a result, and letting go of the need to help.
And then one other angle that's really, really helpful and quite empowering is realize you're not always working on your family member. What you may be working on is your holographic projection of your experience of that family member. So in essence, you're kind of working on yourself. And that can also free you up from some of the expectations and the push-pull tug of war that you enter into when it's feeling like you really want to be able to help someone and then feeling powerless to be able to help them. So, particularly if you're trying to help them because you want them to change, this is where it gets tricky. That's where working on your holographic projection of your experience of them is more useful than trying to work on them. Because you change your experience of them, they'll change how they reflect back based on what you're projecting. So it gets a little complicated because it's what came first, the chicken or the egg, and maybe nobody came. So with that being said, I think Richard wants to add one more thing, and then we are over time, so I got to turn it over to Kay.
Well, it's like looking through a series of lenses darkly, slightly lighter that you let go.
And if you didn't hear that, then I will say that he said, looking through a series of lenses, they get progressively darker until they get lighter.
Yeah, just letting go progressively.
And with that being said, it was our intention that you would get really clear on intention and attention without being in tension, and that you would have the experience of enjoying your experience of matrix energetics and letting go, getting out of the way, and being a conduit for this field. I'm going to turn it over to Kay to provide you with upcoming announcements in her Kay-alicious way. And thank you all for joining us for this hour of inspiring information, and we'll see you for the next webinar whenever that is. Take care, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Melissa. And
you're welcome.
Thank you, Richard.
Now I'm echoing. I invite you all to stay with me for a couple minutes if you can, and hear some announcements of upcoming events, but don't worry about it if you can't stay, because the announcements will be on the replay link. First, here's some upcoming webinars. You can join Melissa for an MJOY webinar on Wednesday, March 8th at 5 p.m. Pacific time, and this one's called Love Needs No Protection. You can visit the MJOY website at www.mjoyheartfield.com for more information about this webinar or to register. And on Saturday, March 11th from 8 to 11 a.m. Pacific time, you can join Richard for an MED workshop webinar on weight loss, blood sugar regulation, and metabolism. MED webinars are open to all who have attended an MED or Holoset seminar. The next Matrix Energetics webinar with both Melissa and Richard will be on Thursday, March 16th at 3 p.m. Pacific time, and it's called Matrix Energetics and Rule Sets. Matrix Energetics webinars, as you all already know, are open to all those who have attended a Fundamentals or a Level 1 and 2 seminar. The next group Transpersonal Transformation Session webinar, or as we call them GTTs, with Richard will be Thursday, March 23rd at 3 p.m. Pacific time, and GTTs are open to everyone. There will be another MED webinar at the end of the month with Richard on Thursday, March 30th at 4 p.m. And this one will be about sexual function and dysfunction. This webinar is open to anyone who's attended an MED or Holosets seminar. To register for the MED, Matrix Energetics, or GTT webinars, please use the links in our newsletter or visit the Institute for Harmonic Resonance Technology website at www.ihrt.org. www.I-HRT.com. And again, to register for MJOY webinars and all MJOY events, please visit the MJOY website at www.mjoyhartfield.com. Now for some upcoming seminars. Richard will be bringing Master Energy Dynamics plus Master Harmonic Resonance Technology, or as we call it, MED and MHRT, to St. Louis, Missouri, and that will be March 25th through 27th. To register, visit the I-HRT website at www.i-hrt.com. We haven't announced these following seminars yet, but please save the dates. Richard will be in Houston, Texas next month, April 22nd through 24th, with a holoset seminar. And Melissa and Richard will be in Denver, Colorado, August 5th through the 8th, with Matrix Energetics Fundamentals and Mastery Intensives, plus Psycho-Emotional Energetics. And you can join them. I don't know what's with the echo. Yes.
Yes. I think you skipped June.
No, I'm getting there.
Oh, okay, because you said August. Go back to your announcement.
Okay. You know what? I did skip June because I have it out of order.
Yeah.
Melissa and Richard will both be in Seattle June 3rd through 6th, and this will be for Matrix Energetics Fundamentals and Field Trip Intensives plus Psycho-Emotional Energetics. And then you get to see Richard and Melissa again in Denver, Colorado, August 5th through the 8th. This will be Matrix Energetics Fundamentals and Mastery Intensives plus Psycho-Emotional Energetics. Don't worry if you didn't get all this or if you got tripped up by me getting tripped up, because this will all be announced in our newsletter probably this week, and it will be on our calendar at www.i-hrt.com. And now for some upcoming MJOY events. You can join Melissa for an MJOY Integrative Seminar in San Francisco, March 18th and 19th. And you can also join her for the first MJOY Integrative Seminar in Melbourne, Australia, and that's March 25th and 26th. These seminars are open to everyone. Melissa will also be bringing a special MJOY event, Conversations in Consciousness with Melissa Joy, to Bali, Indonesia, April 1st and 2nd. And it's called Practical Metaphysics for Extraordinary Living. And you'll have the option to attend one or both days. And again, this event is open to everyone. MJOY of Being Women is returning to Philadelphia, April 29th and 30th. And this seminar is open to all women. Melissa will be also returning to London with an MJOY Integrative Seminar, May 6th and 7th, and a special MJOY 3-day heart-centered experiential play seminar is coming to Kirchsarten, Germany, and that's May 12th through the 14th. Check the MJOY website for registration and more details, and for all MJOY events at www.mjoyhartfield.com. And everybody, we welcome your feedback on this webinar. I know Richard touched on how important it is for him to hear feedback, and we love to hear feedback from all of you. And we invite you to send it to info@i-hrt.com. And of course, that's the same address. If you have any questions or your question wasn't answered today, please send it to info@i-hrt.com. This was fun. I think they were both on fire today, and I appreciate all of you coming to this webinar, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.